Welcome to Third Space. You might be on a run, you might be out for a drive, you might be at the office, but you're also in third space.
Wow, that was smooth.
Yeah?
That was really smooth.
I practiced it in the shower a lot, and I was really scared when I was saying it. Didn't know how that would come across.
Well,
Like, it's such a simple line, but I don't know.
Everyone out there in their offices or running or whatever, they have been drawn in for sure after that. I'm drawn in.
Yeah,
I just kind of just want to listen to you now.
Yeah, I was doing it in my best podcast voice, too.
Yeah.
Welcome to third. And are we committed to Third Space podcasting? The Third Space podcast, Third Space. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the name of our podcast on the channel is Third Space Podcast.
Okay. And
So-
are we currently Third Space podcasting?
Oh, I guess we are. I mean,
Okay.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. Commit to it, right? Yeah, we
Yeah.
are. Definitely.
Yeah, we are. Yes, and that's how
I-
you do a podcast. Yes, and
Absolutely, we are. Yeah. So the site is up. I'm excited about it. I guess now people can actually listen.
there's real access to it. I like that.
Yeah. So still being kind of fiddled with and changed a bit, but it's there.
I have a hypothetical situation for you.
All right. I'll
This
have
is
a
taken-
hypothetical answer.
There we go. This is taken from Chuck Klosterman's hyper-theticals, so I suppose it's more, it's a really hypothetical situation.
I remember you
Super
mentioning this
hypothetical.
dude to me before, and that's a good idea.
It's basically a list of cards, and I need to go revisit it, but I was looking through some lesson plans earlier today, and I would pose these questions to my class and have them journal about it, just because they're interesting, and they're hypothetical, and they're safe in terms of no one's going to have they're not political in nature, but they still reveal something about us. And really,
Sure.
as a teacher of reading and writing, I want you to be able to justify your beliefs and
Okay.
give reasons. So I want you to imagine the following three sensations. Number one, you're chewing and swallowing the first mouthful of your favorite food after starving yourself for 48 straight hours. The food is prepared perfectly. Number two, lying down on an especially cozy bed after 12 hours of nonstop physical labor on a cold day. Number three, the first moment of urinary release after having held a completely full bladder for more than 90 minutes. So, for the rest of your life, you will feel one of these three ways all the time. This is how you will always feel 24 hours a day. You won't be doing the specific activity, but you'll always be experiencing the acts accompanying euphoria. So, this question is really simple. Which one do you select?
I like the question.
And just to simplify, it's chewing your favorite food, lying down after a hard labor, and peeing when you really, really have to go.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to recall times when I've had these experiences. So I guess I could nitpick the specifics of these, but that's not really the point. I don't think I'll do that, because I was thinking, like, after 48 hours of starving yourself, anything is going to taste good. The fact that it's your favorite food is kind of irrelevant. And, like, also, if you've ever fasted, I've never fasted for 48 hours, but I fasted for more than 24 hours. And when you're...
Have you intentionally?
Yeah.
Okay.
And after you do that, you you strangely lose your appetite, because your body kicks over into essentially burning its fat. And so you actually don't have as much of an appetite.
So you go through a journey of getting really hungry, and it's almost like you break through, you push through
Right.
the
So,
discomfort,
like,
and all of a sudden it's not.
If I try to think of the hungriest I've ever been, it's not, towards the back end of that fast. It's like after eating a small breakfast and then having to go to a late lunch. By that late lunch, I'm ravenous, and
Right.
I'm just like, I could eat anything. And that's like, I'm super hungry then. But if I push through that and fast, then I actually don't have as strong of an appetite. Anyway, that's not the point. That's not.
I agree. I think the thing is you're
That's
really
not the
hungry,
hypothetical.
and you have
But-
this great food. Yeah.
And so this pleasant sensation is not. It's the actual taste of the food that's pleasant. So It's the savoring of that delicious flavor, because if you're just chewing the food, then you're not actually sating your hunger, right? It's the it's the it's the joy of finally being able to eat again.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way of packaging tasting that the pleasure, the maximum pleasure of food, like
Right.
that you have the perfect bite and the perfect amount of hunger and the perfect,
Right.
all of this. It's the maximum pleasure that food can bring you, and what in that singular moment. And then the other one, lying down, like I mean, I would say that the eating one is the
It's the hardest one to actually nail down. I
right.
think.
It's because it's it's explicitly pleasant. I mean, I would say the peeing one is explicitly a release, which is they're all pleasant, but one's a release from the both number 2 and 3 are releases
Yeah.
and relief. This is, I guess, if you're 48 hours and you're starving kind of thing, or you're very, very hungry, I should say. But I don't know. They're just 2 and 3 seem
Right.
more closely aligned than number
Yeah,
1.
I agree with that. Anyway, that's kind of that's what I'm thinking for the first one. And like, I don't know, that one doesn't call to me because while I certainly can enjoy the taste of delicious food. I mean, it doesn't seem that special, and I'm gonna, it's definitely a candidate for choosing, but I'm gonna put that aside for the moment. The getting into bed after a hard day's work, maybe getting under some nice heavy covers. It's cold.
Yeah.
That's very pleasant. But if I were to experience that sensation constantly, like I would be a less effective human being. Like I would be drowsy and falling asleep, and just I wouldn't want to move. I wouldn't want to actually upset that state, even though the hypothetical that you're posing says that I feel that all the time. That feeling makes me want to be stationary.
Right. I'm trying to anticipate what would it feel like to be working out, or in the sort of like an excited state of mind where you're wanting to do and act, and you're feeling that way. What's the interplay there? Like, is
Right.
it distracting and frustrating that you're just wanting to lay there?
Well, and that's another thing. Like when I say it would make me stationary, not just physically, it's almost a mental damper, a soothing,
Mental damper.
blanket on my mind all the time, which can be very pleasant after a long day's work. But sometimes you want some energy. You want to be excitable, and if I had this feeling all the time, I wonder if it would be as easy. You know how excitable I can get. It would be much more difficult for me to, be really excitable. So I don't lean towards that one, even though when I try to think which one of these is the most pleasant, I might choose that one. I don't think I would want that sensation all the time. I think I'm going to choose the peeing feeling. I love the feeling when I pee. I pee all the time, just for this. I pee recreationally.
You're a recreational peer.
Yeah. I'm the best peer of all my peers.
So, wait. Let me ask you. Were you being serious that you love peeing though?
No, no. I'm being silly. But
I knew that.
I mean,
but like, is there really? I mean, there's pleasure when the pain is released, or you are relieved of your pee pain. That's
right. It's not
awesome
actually
feeling.
pain. It can be painful if you really hold it for too long, but it's a bizarre feeling that's just this deep in your body discomfort. I actually like, if I were writing the hypothetical, maybe it's a less pleasant topic to discuss, but when you have to poop really bad, it's way worse than when you have to pee really bad. That sensation gives you cold sweats and makes you shaky and just like almost nauseated with the feeling of that peeing. I've never had it quite get that bad, having to pee.
Well, the act of pooping too is this sort of, you have to, I feel like, exercise your muscles, and if I'm not mistaken, peeing is relaxing a muscle, and
Right.
And I'm actually hard pressed. Maybe you, the science guy, can kind of answer this. But are there how many functions of our body are exercised by relaxation? Because it seems almost every other push and pull and everything we do is constricting. I don't know if that's the right word, but we're using our muscles, we're tightening, but in order for the bladder to function, it's relaxation. Is there anything else like that?
When you exhale, that's relaxing your diaphragm. I mean, obviously
That's a good point.
you had to inhale by using your diaphragm, but when you exhale, then you're relaxing that muscle.
In the same way, you have to exercise your bladder by not peeing on yourself, I suppose.
You could try to make the argument that falling asleep is a relaxation of your conscious perception.
I like that. It's a pleasant thought, or at least an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm sure there are others too, but yeah, peeing definitely a relaxation of a muscle, and that lets it flow. So, but the sensation of peeing, especially when you had to pee really bad, it feels nice, that relief, but it's not a sensation that would put me to sleep or otherwise distract me. I think that, like some sort of superhero, I could channel that sensation for the good of humanity. You know,
it's almost a neutral feeling. It's not going to deter you.
I would be out walking down the sidewalk, and I would see like some ne'er-do-wells harassing an old lady, and I would be like, oh, I really feel like I'm peeing right now. Time to fix this. And I walk over and,
slap them into place and fix things. Ne'er-do-wells.
Some ragamuffins.
When I visualize the sort of pleasure face associated with these three things, like, or even just if you go cartoonish with it, I actually feel like peeing is the most dramatic. If you taste a bite of food, I'm imagining it's actually a similar face. Someone's like maybe closing their eyes and going, and then with lying down, it's kind of an ah. But I feel like the pee like can get a little more enthusiastic, like woohoo, like I don't know, I just or even a longer and like I think that speaks to the release and experiencing that. I mean, I'm with you. If you're choosing 3, I think I'm choosing 3. Not because, but in conjunction with your choice.
Right. Yes. Well, I definitely think you've given us some sound clips to chop up in any ads or anything like that.
I think the lesson here, though, is that like pleasure is in some ways like contingent upon wearing off or change. Mm-hmm. Like we can't just sit there. I don't know that I would want that experience if even just given the option. Would you like this pleasurable thing to feel for the rest of your life? The answer would be nah, no, thank you. I don't want any one feeling forever. That freaks me out.
Yeah, and no, I tend to agree with that. And I mean, right when you asked the question, I was thinking like, well, this almost like many hypotheticals, and especially in hyper-theticals, a lot of times they're just infeasible. And so it's hard to actually put yourself in that mindset and think of what you would do. That's why, like, I can get annoyed at hypotheticals, especially if you're talking with someone who is arguing with you, especially in bad faith, and they say, oh, well, let me ask you this. If this, then what would you do? Well, you're not in that context, and so it's hard to actually assess what your actions would do. And so, I usually give back the annoying answer that, like, well, if this is a hypothetical, then I can do whatever I want. I can solve any problem and, behave as a superhero and do whatever. Like, I hate people trying to box me in with hypotheticals.
Are you saying then that you don't like hypotheticals, generally speaking?
No, well, only when you try to use them against me, really. When you try to box me in bad faith. If they're thought experiments, I really like that. And that kind of leads me into a segment that I was going to try to bring up for the first time with us here. And I hope that in discussing these things, since we're kind of doing it in good faith, we can approach all the different angles of the hypotheticals. I won't necessarily try to box you in.
New segment. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't like you, I mean, a thought experiment is great and it's fun, but if it's some sort of, whether it's a political trap or just some clear, I'm trying to get to know something about you, and then it's a game, and you feel like you're walking in a minefield. So let's hear this new segment.
This new segment, I've tentatively titled it, I think I like the title, Mind Your Morals.
Ooh, alliteration.
Yeah. So it's really simple, but everyone's heard of like ethical dilemmas, moral dilemmas. The classic trolley problem, which I guess if you're unfamiliar with that, is the one where there's a trolley on some tracks. The tracks forks. You're standing by the lever that can make the trolley go left or right. On one fork of the track, there's someone tied up to the tracks, and on the right fork, there's 5 people tied up on the tracks. If you do nothing, then the trolley is going to go and run over 5 people, and if you throw the lever, then it's going to turn the other way and hit one person. What do you do? That's the moral dilemma there.
And that's something we could probably talk about for a long time. But yeah, that's like one of the most
classic
one. Yeah,
it's classic, and there are lots of variations on it, replacing the people on the tracks with loved ones or criminals or whatever,
an innocent baby or something like that. Yeah.
All those kinds of variations, and that can get really interesting. And so along those lines, I tried to come up with a bunch of situations. Some of them are. I classify them as mild. They're not particularly, fantastic. They're not wild situations. They're more realistic. And it's just to kind of think about the morals of the situation. Maybe put yourself in the shoes of the situation, maybe not. And I have some medium ones that are a little bit, either they're more serious moral issues or they're a little bit more fantastical, and then I have spicy ones that are
spicy,
that are either hot button moral topics or really fantastical situations that I've devised. And so I came up with a list, and we're not going to do many, I don't think, because I think any of these could spawn a long discussion. So why don't we start off with a mild one?
I like it.
Just pretty simple to ease us into it.
Did you make these up? Like, you just came up with them?
I made up most of them, and I did a search for a few that I found and modified for my own purposes, and a few are real life issues that you hear about all the time.
I'm excited. This is me doing my hands together and ready to eat, ready to consume whatever you're about to give me.
All right, well, here it comes. This is mild. So you're on the way to work, and you're on the interstate. So you're approaching your exit. Your situation at work isn't too great. Things haven't been well between you and your boss. You get the feeling that you're kind of on thin ice at work. But today, you have an important presentation, and you hope that in giving the presentation, you'll earn some favor and turn things around. But on your way to work, it turns out traffic is backed up in the right lane of the interstate. People are backed up a long way trying to get off of your exit, the one that you need to get to school. They're backed up so far, in fact, that it would take 30 minutes to sit through all of those cars, get off the exit. But the left lane is clear. So the question is, do you wait in the line of cars? Do you obey the law? Do you not be a jerk? Or do you drive in the left lane and cut in front of the cars to get off the exit and hopefully make it in time for your meeting?
Right. Okay, I think I understand everything. I noticed you said obey the law. I don't think it's technically illegal. It's just culturally frowned upon, right? To kind of jump ahead in line like that.
You're right.
Or is it illegal?
No. I think you're right. That's correct. So, yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
Well, let me walk you through how I typically make any decision, and I've told you this before, but it's worth. Like, let's just say it's something innocuous and amoral, like go picking dinner. Like, you and I want to go. You want a burger, and I want pizza. I try to gauge how important. Like, let's just say I kind of want pizza, but you really wanted a burger. Then I feel like most people would do this. They want to just. I would just defer to you and get the burger. But if I'm trying to quantify quality, so trying to quantify desire. So if I could rank, it's just whatever the desire wins out, and I'll choose that one.
You're weighing the pros and cons, essentially, the benefits and the drawbacks, whatever. If a burger sounds 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, delicious to me, and a pizza sounds 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 to you, then you would defer.
Right. But what's difficult, or I honestly think what makes my decision making, it doesn't sound unique, it's not particularly insightful, but I genuinely try to just take in both and try to be sincere about and hold to that. And the same would be true if I was very much wanting that pizza and you just seemed like, I'd prefer a burger, man. I'd push back and I'd say, look, I think I want this pizza more than you want it. So if I apply this situation to these, let's say 50, 60 cars backed up, whatever it is,
right.
I am tempted to say, look, I am not just late to work. Like, everyone's got to get somewhere. That's a pretty obvious thing when you're on the road. You're going from A to B. So everyone's trying to get to work, and it's probably, or maybe not just work, but, most likely everyone's getting to work at this time. But my circumstances are pressing. You gave all the context. My job isn't going well. Here's an opportunity. I'm going to kick myself for having left late or not prepared. I mean, I'm already feeling like I have to own this moment or this mistake, and I'm already trying to be reflective about how did I find myself in this situation. But that's not really the question. So I think I would be the jackass in this situation and be like, look, they're going to think I'm a jackass. This makes me very uncomfortable, but I'm willing to feel uncomfortable and frustrate some people because I'm one car here and I really got to get to work, and I'm not going to do this typically, and I'm going to try and use this as a life lesson when I see someone else cutting in front, that maybe they're not just a jackass, maybe they are in this similar situation. So I think, honestly, I'm gonna do it, and I'm not gonna be happy about it. This is a frustrating situation, but I don't feel like I'm violating moral principle. I think I'm more violating like a social convention, and I take social conventions and politeness and all this very seriously, but I don't take it as seriously as like the social capital or the political capital in my job. Like, that is pressing and immediate and real, and this is all stuff that will dissipate quickly. This scenario, their annoyance with me, all of that is like very temporary, whereas my job is less temporary. This has some possible serious consequences, because it sounds to me like if I'm late for this scenario or this presentation I'm going to give, that could feed feed the fire or whatever, and I don't want that. It could feed the fuel.
Feed you getting fired, and
feed me getting fired.
I think I tend to agree with your assessment. When I was thinking it over earlier, that's kind of the conclusion I came to as well. The moral argument, I couldn't come up with any especially strong moral arguments against cutting in line, because I came to the same conclusion that really this is more, it's not a law thing, it's more of a socially agreed upon way of behavior on the road. You might have to suffer someone shooting you a bird in your rearview mirror, maybe a horn honk, but like you're gonna get to work on time and hopefully keep your job.
Is it injustice though? I mean, at its core, is the person who doesn't deserve to be in front is forcing their way in front. It's a mild injustice, right?
Well, I think the moral argument that you would have to make against cutting in line is that you don't know the plights of all of the 50 or 60 cars in line. Every one of those 50 or 60 people could be in the same situation as you, if not worse, and just deciding to take what they see as the morally correct action of waiting in line orderly to get off the interstate. And so by cutting in line in front of them, you're implicitly saying my plight is more important than yours,
yes,
when really you don't know anything about them. Now the law of averages would say that sure, on average these people are not experiencing any emergencies, and this is part of my reasoning as well, is that if it were truly an emergency, a life and death sort of thing, then they would be getting over on the shoulder, or taking more extreme actions than simply cutting in line. And so I'm okay with incurring the moral wrath of some people in the interstate line, and I probably would also make that selfish decision on the interstate to preserve my job.
Well, just because statistically, like you said, it's you're making the assumption that in this specific scenario, my situation's worse than the other people's, right. And you're probably right, even though you don't know.
Here's a twist on the situation that makes it very clear. What if instead of a bunch of normal cars, the thing that's causing the traffic was a gigantic pileup, lots of injuries, and in the line waiting to get off are 5 or 6 ambulances, and here you come approaching the exit, and in order to cut in, you have to cut in front of ambulances with their lights on and stuff. Obviously, people would get out of the way for the ambulances. But right. If that were the situation, then you would know some people that I'm cutting in front of actually, maybe in life-threatening danger.
And then it changes my answer entirely. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, not for a second am I going to put my presentation above like safety and health and like legitimate life or death type stuff.
Right.
And just legally too, that might actually get into being illegal.
Right. And you would have an excuse when you got to work and say, "Did you see on the news the 30-car pileup?"
Right, that's
I
a
was
good
in
point.
that. Then you probably
Or
have an
near
excuse.
that, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's a nice mild one. Do you like kind of the idea of mind your morals?
I do. I
and
just because like it reveals. I think what our moral compass is perhaps the most important thing we have. Like, I mean, I value so many things about my identity or people's identity, but I would say morality is a huge one. Like, what common threads? Where do we differ? Why do we differ? Do we actually have similar values, but they manifest differently? And when you talk through it, you might discover, oh, it's not that this person's immoral or against your morals. It's more that there's some subtle value judgments that I can learn about why they arrived at that conclusion. So yeah, I love the idea of examining, hypothetical situations that test my compass and help me think about it. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Good. I think one thing that that we should do for these, even if briefly, is try to make a case, the pro moral case, and the con moral case, whatever it may be, for each of the issues, just to tease out, what's the argument for this course of action or against this course of action.
Well, then, really quickly, I mean, isn't it? I mean, I said this already, but it's unjust, or it's unjust. It's injustice to. We have a line. You've cut the line. That's just wrong. Like, there's not. Like, it's not illegal, but it is. It is.
Yeah. The question is, how explicit is that understanding? Like,
I think it's
for example,
fairly solidified in our culture.
Well, yeah, it is a cultural thing, though, and especially in America, where the melting pot, all these different cultures come together. You can't be.
You said
100%.
it like that's a silly thing, the melting pot. No,
Well, I'm not trying to make fun of that, but it's a cliche term.
Yeah.
Like, we're not 100% guaranteed that everyone shares the same cultural norms.
Right.
Whereas, for example, if you remember when you and I visited Japan, do you remember when we were in Tokyo or wherever, and we would go to cross the street, and even on like small side streets, no one crossed the street until the traffic signal said to walk across the street.
Yes.
Like, even when no cars were coming, it was early morning, and a side street, clearly you're not going to get run over, but people would stand there and wait until the sign turned.
It was
in order
strange.
To cross.
No traffic. No one's observing them. I'm assuming there's not some sort of, policeman going to jump out. It was, and we'd all be standing there. And you and I would just, obey the cultural norm and law, I suppose, of just not crossing. But definitely in America, like, I would have crossed without thinking. It was just sort of an obvious, no one's around. Let's cross the street, guys.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Well, I mean, when I'm driving around in my city here in the U.S., like, I actually think more often than not, pedestrians that I see just start walking regardless, unless traffic is actively crossing the road. They don't care if it's the walking man or the hand. They just start. If there's no cars crossing the road, they start going and expect the cars to stop for them. And in Japan, it definitely wasn't that way.
Right.
And so my point in saying that is that the cultural expectation to wait in line rather than cut in line is cultural, and you can make an argument that it's not explicit, and so you're not explicitly doing something unjust by cutting in line because you didn't know, or you couldn't be guaranteed that everyone agreed to those same set of moral guidelines.
I had a situation in Walmart. Point taken, by the way. But I had a situation in Walmart checking out. And you know how the lanes, they actually have like another set right in front of them sometimes. How do I put this? Like,
Yeah, I think I know.
They're
They're
stacked.
kind of staggered.
Yeah. And so we were in this situation where they were both open and people had lined up, and whichever one would open up first, the next person would come in line. But the line looked like it was behind the one closer to the back. I mean, the one everyone was close to. And so a woman just walked up past all of us, and someone said something to her. She said, "No one's in line here." And it was just, I don't even remember. This was years ago, but I thought, you know what you're doing, and you're being a jerk, and that's unbelievable. And I felt like that was unjust.
That reminds me vaguely of you'll recognize this story, but I have a coworker who I used to work more closely with who almost spitefully parks in handicap parking spots, especially at work, because there's no one at work who has a handicap sticker or legitimately needs the handicap spots, and we don't have guests. And so she says that it's point. Huh?
Never have guests. Like
we occasionally have guests, but almost all the time don't have guests. And when we do have guests, they're not in wheelchairs or anything. So,
yeah.
And so she parks in the handicap spots and says that she doesn't think it's right for the government to mandate where you can and can't park, and that the space is just going to waste. And I'm sure she has other more detailed arguments, but that attitude of I see an opportunity and the rules don't explicitly tell me I can't behave this way, or I don't agree with the rules, I'm going to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, do you think she sincerely holds that conviction and is taking a principled stand, or she's justifying being able to park closer now?
It's hard to say. I didn't get too deeply into that conversation with her, and I can understand her argument a little bit, because I frequently get annoyed at seeing empty handicap spaces, especially when there are 4, 5, or 6 of them, and the parking lot is jam full, and you have to drive around for a long time looking for a spot. Meanwhile, all the handicap spots are open. That annoys me. Because I don't think that the benefit that handicap spots provide to handicapped people is actually worth the top-down government mandate of handicap spots everywhere. I don't think it's worth it, because the benefit that they gain is now they have to wheel themselves still across the road and into the building, as opposed to a little further down the parking lot. I don't think that in the context of their situation, that distance is all that valuable, especially it's not worth the government mandating that we put all of these spots everywhere for that small benefit.
Yeah, so there is, I think, a case to be made and to examine, like, what is the usefulness of handicapped spots. But I think what's bizarre about this person's story is that they've decided they don't agree, and then they just decide to rebel by doing. It's like someone saying, I don't, this whole taxes thing, this is a little too high. I think I'm only going to pay this much, or I'm going to pay none. Like, well, wait a second. I don't know that you can just do that. To me, it's like you can disagree, but you're also part of something bigger, in which this is the way things are. And so to rebel against that, like, what are the costs and benefits?
That's true. That's a good point. I don't, as much as I enjoy taking principled stands, I don't think, I guess you might call this vigilante justice in a way. Vigilante parking lot justice might not be exactly the right approach to take, because who are you going to convince with those tactics?
You're not. That makes me suspicious that she just wants to park close.
It does. That it does bring that suspicion there, and that may be part of the motivation. But like, again, let's imagine that that's not the motivation. How is she possibly going to even budge the status quo handicap spot situation? Because everyone, like, if you ever try to make the argument that we should abolish handicap parking spots, people are going to think you're a monster who doesn't care about the disabled, and it's an emotional argument against that position. No one is going to actually weigh the pros and cons of handicap spots and how much benefit they actually do. No one's going to do that. None of her local legislators or anyone is going to listen to her argument. Nothing is ever going to change. So, in a way, you could get into the mindset of thinking, taking a principled stand, vigilante parking lot justice is the only way that I'm going to even have my opinion heard. You can get into the mindset of thinking that's the only way you can behave.
I think it's just a poor presentation of the argument, because you're right. If you go in and say, let's abolish handicap parking spots, you're not going to get a whole lot of traction, whether or not you're statistically right even. I think the thing to do is go, here's a better way to help people with handicap issues.
Well, that would be my argument. And in fact, I actually think it's kind of a good argument, rather than appealing to the government to top-down force everyone to include handicap spots in their parking lots, why don't you let the market decide what's the best approach for handling disabled customers? And you can imagine at a grocery store like Publix, which has really good customer service.
Did you know shopping's a pleasure there?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I actually, I would probably choose the feeling of shopping at Publix over the feeling of peeing, given the choice.
Where peeing is a pleasure.
But you can imagine a store like Publix with really good customer service, as opposed to having handicap parking spots take up, the first 3 or 4 rows of their entire parking lot. They could have, people on the little motor scooter buggy things go pick up the disabled people who are parking. Maybe there are designated spots in a different spot in the parking lot. If you park there, then someone meets you there with the cart, or maybe they just have, in the median rows of their parking lots, they have the motorized carts that they put out there all the time. You could just imagine a better solution to the problem that is more equitable, still provides a service to the disabled people without causing potential traffic problem. I mean, there are a lot of downsides to handicap parking spots that sound petty, and really this whole topic is a little petty, but they take up space, they can cause traffic problems. Parking lot coverage on the ground is a problem for environmental reasons. It causes more runoff, more deforestation. I mean, I don't know, if I'm trying to be petty about it, then, people complain about parking lots. Handicap spots are parts of parking lots.
And I think the more serious consequence is that it allows, so if the government makes me put in the handicap thing and put in a handicap rail and put in all of this is the legal way to do things, it perhaps robs me from, now I don't have to care. Like I did what I had to do, and I'm not going any further. I've obeyed the law instead of. Right. I'm imagining what you were saying, like almost a commercial of Publix, like serving their clientele and every people from all walks of life, and this sort of heartwarming, like look how, and then it's going to attract people. I believe people are going to go where they're treated the best, kind of thing. Yes. And so there'd be a positive public pressure to ensure that you're helping everyone. And besides, like I think what your point is too is like if you're in a handicapped spot, it's not rolling your wheelchair 20 feet. I mean, honestly, I'm ignorant to this, so I'm not going to claim to speak for anyone. But it's not rolling your chair 20 more feet. It's actually things like transitions from indoors to outdoors and ramps and textures. And I imagine it's a whole slew of different things like that. And really the challenge is getting in and out of vehicles anyway.
Yes.
That's the difficult stuff, not rolling a little bit longer.
That's part of my my spontaneous case against handicap parking spots. Like ramps on the sidewalk inconvenience no one. Like I don't even notice the ramps when they're there, and so it's an excellent thing to say, hey, we think everyone should have a ramp on their sidewalk so that people in wheelchairs can more easily get up onto the curb. It makes perfect sense. It doesn't inconvenience anyone. The handicap parking spots, however, are wasted space most of the time, and they do inconvenience people. So that's not an ideal solution to the problem. And like you say, the amount of effort that a disabled person has to spend in their journey from their home to the grocery store, where do they spend the most effort? I would almost guarantee you that it's not in the traversal of the parking lot between a parking spot and the door. Or the ramp on the sidewalk. It's not that traversal. It's, like you say, getting in and out of the vehicle, the actual navigation, navigating the curb, getting into the scooter or wheelchair or what have you. That's where the difficulty is. That's where we should be focusing our effort.
But what do you
think? Here's another thing that another downside that's more of a Bennett annoyance is that handicap spots, they're trendsetters for these other hangers-on of parking lot spots. Like, do you ever go and see, like, oh, well, the first 3 are blue for handicapped, and then there's another 2 or 3 for pregnant mothers or just mothers in general, and then there's another one for veterans, and
or even
like another one for employee of the month or whatever. Like, come on, like, just it's a parking lot. Just make it a free-for-all. Like, are we going to eventually have you can run this to absurdity and say like, oh, are we going to have like, elderly parking spots? Like, here's the parking spots for our teachers and our firemen and any social
Right. When do
group that we
stop?
want to put on a pedestal. Let's just give them some parking spots.
Let, so let me try to. We're zoomed into the specifics and all of this and the logistics, but what if you take a more zoomed out approach, more culturally, in which people with disabilities have been sort of relegated to the side and like dismissed for. People with disabilities like and special needs were not even. They were like in a closets in the basements of schools and stuff like that. They were, it's basically just don't talk about or don't think about. And so I think if I'm trying to take a gracious interpretation of all of this is to say, no, we're gonna culturally shift, and we're also gonna legislate. Like if you open a business, you've got to make your place accessible, and this is just not a negotiation we're having. Like there's a minimal standard, and so whether it's ramps or whatever it is, it seems reasonable that we were not in a place culturally that we were sort of like either it was just more taboo or embarrassing or whatever nasty like they weren't people with disabilities weren't as welcome in our society. It seems like we are far more welcomed, and that seems to correlate with perhaps saying, hey, we're going to make things accessible for them too. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, and I certainly agree that we should treat disabled people humanely and with kindness that we would treat anyone else. But I have two observations about what you said. First, is it true that we used to view the disabled in such a negative light, like you say? I'm not sure that that's actually true.
Well, I would like to study, because obviously we're just talking on the spot here, but when I took some special education courses, it was a pretty bad past in education anyway, specifically education. We didn't know what we
I
were
can
doing.
understand.
We were just like, put them in the closet. It was bad.
Yeah, sure, I can understand that for education, but what about for people in wheelchairs or with cerebral palsy or whatever? Like, what was their plight like? Is it truly as bad as you say, or
I don't know. I
don't know either.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I'm always skeptical of these claims of oppression initially. Certainly there are oppressed groups and have been, that's undeniable, but whenever you can try to get whenever you try to take on the plight of some other group in order to make a change in the present, I'm always a little bit skeptical of your motivations. Not that I'm accusing you of that, but that's only one thing. Is I would like to know more about whether that's true, if in the past we really did treat people with disabilities poorly. And I suppose that it makes sense, given that we passed legislation for these things, that there was at least some case to be made that it was necessary. So that, I'll grant. But the second point that I want to make is, you said that we need to make a cultural shift in the way we treat the disabled. My question would be, is it the government's role to control or direct culture?
That's a huge question.
Yeah, I would say absolutely not. That the government is not the arbiter of our cultural direction and should not be used as a cudgel to push our culture in a given direction. That would be my argument.
It should be downstream from culture. Like culturally, we feel this, and this. All right. Well, I'm not even sure. Yeah. It's just a big topic that I.
Yeah. Anyway, we've deviated. Mind Your Morals has really gotten us into a moral quandary. Not even about handicapped parking spots.
Let me ask you this though: what's the most sinister reason, perhaps, that like handicapped parking spots or any sort of legislation like that? When you said you start to suspect the moral or the motivations? What is the most corrupt way it could go? Like, was someone back there saying, I just can't wait to control small businesses, or what's going on possibly?
That could control is a big part of it, I think.
Kind of a classic, just expand government, like expand
government. Also, I think probably the larger portion is virtue signaling. the ability to cast yourself as morally superior and your political opponents as monstrous and morally inferior, to say, I'm the good person, they're the bad person, vote for me and my policies.
Yeah.
That's really what I think it is, and I think that this is rampant in modern day politics. People trying to take advantage of particular groups in order to get political points.
Well, it is interesting. Like, I think we should treat the handicapped better. What do my political
Yeah, what do
opponent
you
doesn't.
think?
Like, yeah, okay,
That's why I say if you ever tried to make the case, and this is going back to my coworker, if she ever tries to make a serious case, even through the correct channels of talking to her local government officials or whatever, that we should do away with handicap spots, should be laughed out of the building by people on all of all political stripes. She would just be laughed out because no one's going to no one's going to fight for her position.
Well, I would also take her more seriously if she was passionate about, like, she used the opportunity. Hey, why are you parking in that handicap spot? And then she was like, I'm actually trying to get some changes done here, and here to make life even better for people with disabilities. But instead, it sounds like she's just kind of using this pseudo-intellectual, a little bit provocative argument that has merit, but she's just parking in handicap spots. Come on, right? Like, that's what it sounds like to me.
Right. And I also, again, like I say, I didn't have an in-depth discussion with this person on this topic. It could be that this was just kind of an off-the-cuff bravado posturing sort of statement that she made, and she does it at our workplace where it's really safe to do so and not anywhere else. It could easily be that. I want to move us along to another one, because that was a mild. If that was mild, then I'm very interested to see where medium and spicy
I'd like to see
get us.
medium. I don't even know if I can handle spicy this time. You know what I mean? Like, maybe we save it for another time. Seriously.
So this medium one is a weird one that I came up with before I even conceptualized this segment, actually, and I massaged it into being fit for this. So prepare yourself for weirdness.
Okay.
So imagine, I guess, for your part, let's put you in the position of a judge who's examining the situation that has arisen. So imagine that someone creates a poison, and this poison is fatal only when the victim, the person who is poisoned, says a certain rare word. So perhaps the poison is a powder that someone gets sprinkled into their cereal or whatever. If they eat the cereal, nothing happens to them. But if they say a particular rare word, like the word Neanderthal, they say that word, they keel over dead.
Okay.
It's instantly fatal if you say the word of this Neanderthal poison. So anyway, if you catch a poisoner, someone who's sprinkled this stuff in someone's cereal after they poison the victim, but before the victim says Neanderthal, they're still alive, they haven't been harmed in any way, but if they ever say the word Neanderthal, they will die. How would you as the judge handle the poisoner's situation? Has he committed a crime? If so, what would the sentence be? Would it be an equivalent sentence to murder, or would it be something like a speech-related crime, since it only affects the victim's ability to say a word? What do you think about that situation?
Well, I'll give you my knee-jerk reactions is that, well, certainly they've committed a crime because there's something about intent to harm that's very clear there. I'm sure, I wish I knew more about the law, but like attempts at murder happen, or even plots to carry out a murder, or trying to hire a hitman, or all sorts of crazy things go on that the plans are foiled, and that results still in some major like jail time. So I think there's probably plenty of precedent that it is, bad and you deserve jail time. They haven't committed murder. Is the person who took the poison, are they aware now? Like, they just have to not say Neanderthal?
Yes. Well, so let's examine the situation in which the poisoner doesn't disclose the word.
Okay, yeah.
And the victim knows they've been poisoned, but they don't know what the word is. And then let's examine the situation in which, they know it's the word Neanderthal.
Well, one is they're deeply affected if you don't know what the word is. Do you know it's a rare word, or it could be any given word? That's the point, right? It's just a particular word that triggers this. Or do you mean that they won't accidentally slip up and say,
I don't know. I mean, Neanderthal is a rare word,
Right.
but I've said it before, so and I probably will say it again. So it's not rare enough that you never say
But
it.
if the word was towel, you might actually slip up even if you knew the word was towel.
That's right.
And
Well, that's why I chose Neanderthal, because I don't think it's something that's just you're going to slip up and say within the week, or even if you knew. You could avoid saying the word Neanderthal if you knew you're going to die if you say it.
The psychological horror, if I didn't know what the word was, knowing a word could
terrible.
be spoken, I wouldn't speak hardly at all. If I knew it was a rare word, then I would I really dumb down my vocabulary, I suppose. I don't know. Anyway, it would be horrendous. If I knew the word, it would still affect me. It's just a single word. It's kind of fascinating that a single word I would probably become oddly obsessed with, wouldn't that be strange? How it's like don't think of elephants or whatever the thing is, and everyone's thinking of elephants. You can't. Right. You're just not allowed to say this one word. You have to be very. I mean, life or death. Don't say this one word. Very easy task to do or not do. Yet I would I would dream this word. I would,
right.
It would enter into my psyche in a way and attach itself to me, and I would be avoiding it and horrified by it. So it's also like it would torment me as well if I had been poisoned by this. And so, I mean, this is deathly. I mean, this is pretty serious. It's very close to murder, on par with murder for me. I don't see that. My instincts say this isn't a giant gap. A person gave a poison with intent to harm, and it could kill.
So you're assuming intent to harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. It's hard to argue, given my setup, that it's not a malicious act, and I'm not even trying to suggest it's not a malicious act. Let's say instead that the reason that this guy poisoned someone is that there was some drama, but he cheated with his wife, or some cheating situation, and his wife's name is Samantha, and that's the kill word. If you ever say the word Samantha, then you die. So it's not that he necessarily wants to kill the other person. He just wants them to never be able to talk about his wife again. You can imagine a situation in which,
a passion poison.
It's some poisoning of passion here, and so it's not that I'm trying to come up with a situation in which his intent isn't to kill. It's almost like a strange kind of restraining order against talking about his wife.
Yeah.
I want to hone in on whether, because you seem to think that this was very close to murder.
At least, yeah, that's my initial response. Is like, well, yeah.
I mean, there's no question that it is deadly, can be deadly, but when you think about, especially if you know the word is Neanderthal or Samantha or whatever, if you're aware of that, it sounds like you might be really haunted by it, but I wonder how life-impacting that would really be. Like, if I knew that I just couldn't say the word Neanderthal, like, my day-to-day isn't really impacted that much. There's no question that some crime has been committed and some damage has been done to me, but how severe is that? How much punishment do we owe the poisoner to correct or punish that behavior? I'm not sure, because the fact that it's potentially deadly suggests that maybe the charge should be attempted murder, but the impact on my life isn't that great. So I don't know.
That's what's interesting about this hypotheticals. I'm trying to attach it to some other act and see similar. That's how we function in the world, right? You present me information, and I say, well, what does this resemble that I know, and how do I feel about what I know, and also where can I go from there? And I don't. This is a strange scenario in which, yeah, you're trying to make the case that it's small. It's not really convincing me, because there's no getting around the fact that this is you've now presented possible death. I guess that possible death is always around the corner, but it's hard for me. Even with the construct of it's poison, and I've delivered this thing that could kill you and absolutely will kill you if you do this other thing, say a word, reasonably easy to avoid, but God, I don't know, Bennett. I tend to still I don't feel persuaded that it's not a big, that's it's fairly easy to avoid. So just fine him $50. We could.
$50 is obviously way too small.
Would 5 years be about right? Like,
that's what I'm thinking. Like, I was trying to quantify. Like, so let's imagine you were the one who was poisoned. You can't say Neanderthal anymore, or you will die. You're in court, and the guy gets sentenced. What would satisfy your sense, your sense of justice? If would a 5-year jail sentence make you think, all right, well, I can't say Neanderthal anymore, so I'm pissed about that. But at least the guy's going to be sitting in jail for 5 years. Or would that not be good enough for you? And would you want him to have, a life sentence or something?
This might not be where we want to go, but I was thinking if I were, even from a societal standard, that we need to shut this drug down and we need to hang this guy from a rooftop and basically say no one's giving out this drug or we're gonna make an example of this guy. So, but that's not really.
Yeah, well, contemplating a world in which a drug like this exists is a whole other interesting line of thought, but yeah, not the point of Mind Your Morals.
So, I don't think I'd be satisfied with 5 years. This is silly, but my freedom of speech has now been infringed upon. You've altered the way I interact with words. Like, to say something is so off limits. That's a principled thing. Like I should be able to engage and speak and say what I want to say, and now I can't.
Sure, but the punishments for a speech infringement crime is certainly lower than the punishment.
You're right about that, but that's just one aspect. That's
but I
like
agree.
An additional
I agree with
aspect.
You.
It's another thing. Like you've put my life in jeopardy. You've
impacted my freedom in some small way.
Yes. And I don't. I might sound silly here, but I don't think I'd be satisfied with 5 years.
I think I agree. I think I'm on board with you so far. I think it should be worse.
But
I was trying to think I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the charges and the sentences that exist for attempted murder and all that stuff. But you can imagine if a dude with a baseball bat, sees someone on the sidewalk, runs up and takes a big swing at someone's head, and the person manages to duck, and then everyone tackles the guy with the bat and disarms him. And so the person who got swung at did not get hurt, but it was still the intent to cause potentially deadly harm. Like the guy,
plus something
the guy
else,
who swung,
though, right? Because this guy could now die.
Obviously, there's it's not the same thing, but I'm trying to think of something even close. Like the guy, even though he didn't cause any harm, he swung the bat, didn't hit anyone. He hasn't caused any harm yet. He still would be charged with a crime.
Imagine, too, the wife who calls a hitman for her to inquire about pricing for her husband, and then boom, she's caught, busted right there. It was, a police sting operation, but she was on the conversation talking about money, right. Dates. It was serious. Had the money ready, basically, right. And literally hasn't done anything other than express that she's willing to pay for her husband being killed. I like that. That seems to me, because it's a little colder. Like the bat one, you're like, this guy might be angry, and then he calms down. He's like, thank God someone stopped me. This feels a little like when they arrest her, she can't go like, oh, it was the throes of passion. I feel like it's this poison seems to be this sort of more calculated thing too.
What would the charge be in that case? Like conspiracy or what? Because you obviously, if you try to hire a hitman, you're not going away.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is something we could. There's a definitive
we need to have
answer,
a lawyer,
right? We need to have a lawyer on and tell us, because I'm sure there's a definitive answer for that. There's a lot of, how far did she go? Did she meet up with him? How many calls? I'm sure there's lots of that, but, that's a fairly straightforward answer, I'm sure. And so, and I was even just trying to test the feel out of, okay, how about 10 years? How about the guy's in jail for 10 years? And maybe we're approaching. Like it's
getting closer.
Seems like we're approaching. Part of me is okay with life and that you're done, you're in jail forever now. But then,
well, we don't hand that out even for people who commit murder now.
I don't really understand this whole 20 to life or what life means, and then parole with good behavior. I just don't understand. It's like very complicated system to me, and I don't even. Do we do that? Like if someone murders someone, do you go to jail for like 20 years, and then if everything's cool and you've been good, you go? Like what? You leave? I don't understand.
What I have a wrinkle. So what if the guy, you've been poisoned, you're in court, and the guy says that it takes a long time to develop this poison, but he can develop an antidote. It'll just take him 3 years to develop an antidote, and he pleads for a lowered sentence in order to develop the antidote. And he will do that. So after 3 years, he'll get the antidote. He'll give you the antidote, and you will be able to say Neanderthal to your heart's content. How would that affect his sentence?
This is interesting because I feel like way less burdened all of a sudden. So the guy is either sorry or he's remorseful, or at least he will undo what he did. Maybe it's because he got caught. I don't know. But he can undo the damage pretty much completely, except I'll have to go for 3 years. Not completely because there's 3 years.
Yes.
Well, then maybe he should just be in jail for 3 years. Like me not being able to say Neanderthal and him being in jail for 3 years. It sounds like he's getting punished pretty harsh when you put it in that frame.
I know, right?
Like all I have to do is not say Neanderthal, and it's not an eye for an eye type situation. It's like, but the death consequence, like he can. It's just an extraordinary. Good job, Bennett. Like a good job thinking of a weird, almost no harm done, but also maximum harm done. So.
I have another one, a spicy one that I thought of this morning that I like just as much or more than that one. But I think we've gone on long enough for Mind Your Morals, so
I think
we'll
so
save
too.
that. We'll save that for the next installment, but just be excited for that one.
So I'm gonna force myself to give a concrete answer. With the wrinkle of the 3 years, he should be in jail for 3 years and working on the antidote or whatever. And then I feel like that's about right. Without it, I'd say I'm gonna.
Would you how nervous would you be after taking the antidote and you tentatively go to say
oh yeah
Neanderthal?
Actually, that's funny. I think I probably still wouldn't say the word, right? Like, it would be terrifying.
How absurd is the situation anyway where again, this is not really along the lines of what the discussion is supposed to be about, but how did this guy get caught, and how did we believe him? He says, "Ha, you've been poisoned, sucker." Like, if you say the word Neanderthal, you're going to keel over dead because I poisoned your Cheerios this morning. And you believe him, and you're like, well, okay, I guess I'm better safe than sorry. Call the police now. And, how does this whole situation get created in which you're sitting in court and the judge is like, oh, well, this will be 5 years.
In fact, this makes a great little short story. So someone comes in the room and says, "You cannot. I have poisoned you. You will die if you say, Neanderthal." And do you say it, or because this is an absurd situation. It's stupid. It's like, dude, but he does something. It's convincing. Like he shows you the poison or whatever. There's some sort of credibility about this absurd claim.
It would be another twist to the story, or a different short story altogether, if you had a con artist somehow faking this poison, and he manages to somehow know when someone is going to die, and he stages them saying the word Neanderthal right before they die in order to convince the other person they've been poisoned. I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah. I'll email it to my buddy M. Night Shyamalan.
Your buddy. I just call him Shyamalan when we're hanging. Or M.
Hey, M. There's this is a silly thing, but there's an apartment complex right across from the Zaxby's in my town called The Village, and the sign for the apartments looks just like the title screen for that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village. It looks the same. It's like the same font and everything.
That's kind of strange.
Yeah, I notice it every time I'm sitting in the drive-thru. I'm like, there's The Village.
There it is. That's where they shot the movie. That's where they got inspired. All right, so I got a question for you.
What's that?
Is it significant that lobster, fish, and chicken are our culture's word for that animal and the meat, whereas most mammals seem to require euphemisms like beef and pork that help us separate the meat we eat from the living creatures the meat once was?
Huh. So the lobster, chicken, and
Fish,
well, and
generally
fish.
speaking. We just say salmon, but we don't
Fish.
say, like, I'm eating cow. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why? What's the distinguishing factor? Like, what's going on there?
Huh, good question. I wonder if it's if that restriction is a language thing, for whatever reason, words developed in a particular way, or whether it's because, we see cows as more, more conscious or friendly animals, than we have to de-animalize them as the word beef in order to, where we don't see chickens as being like pets. Lobsters certainly not pets, and
But we don't see
fish are
cows
just kinda
as
meh.
like. I was gonna go on pork though. Pigs are known for being smart, I suppose, to some degree. And oftentimes there seems to be like a cute scale of what we either consider pets, or maybe cows are just a little bit too cute, and pigs. And we're not saying they're super cute. We'll eat you, but
Right, sure.
But we need to wrestle with that cuteness, because chickens they're not cute, right?
Well, yeah, when you're walking through the grocery store and you see a sign that says beef, you don't, it doesn't put the image of a cow in your head necessarily. Or if it said cow, and you're like, oh, time to get some cow, then, it's just very clear what that is.
I'm gonna get me some cow patties. That's what a burger is, right?
Well, maybe
It's a cow
it's
patty.
also because just because you might be confused, but since you also get milk from cows, because you could imagine a grocery store where they just had a cow aisle where it had beef and milk all in the same aisle, but the grocery store needed to split up those sections, so they came up with the word beef and the word milk, and so they could have two different sections.
I really think there's a distancing intentionally with
Well,
pork. Like,
lobsters don't have milk, so case closed.
Have you ever tried to milk a lobster?
Chicken milk? Yeah. Lobsters have nipples.
You can milk anything with nipples.
Lobster nipple? That would be a good band name.
Did you know that lobster nipple? That just hit me. Lobsters used to be considered sort of just trash and gross, and people didn't want to eat them, and they fed them to prisoners. I need to go. You should read Malcolm Gladwell's piece called "Remember the Lobster," something like that. But he has to go to this lobster festival, and where is it popular? Like Maine or something like that. Where do they have a lot of lobster?
Yeah, I think it's Maine lobsters. That's their main food.
He went to the festival not really wanting to go, was my impression reading it, and he just writes this really. This is where I got the idea from about calling lobsters lobster and fish, but we call beef, or we call cows beef. And so anyway, his whole thing about lobsters is fascinating, and saying they might be more intelligent, or at least able to feel pain, or all that. He just makes an interesting and unique case that has nothing to do with like writing about the Maine Lobster Festival. It was supposed to be this puff piece, and he wrote this really heavy piece and really critical of the whole thing. Pretty funny.
Yeah.
But
I guess that's kind of the same idea with lamb, or at least with veal, like, oh, give me some of that baby lamb.
yeah, like it's more.
No, I'll have some veal.
Baby lamb, that's terrible. I'll have veal. But we call lamb, so I just don't know why and where we draw those lines, and whether it's just more palatable, like steak. I guess there's different cuts of the meat too, so maybe it's just better to. Oh, is it truly just out of specificity, or is there something going on? Because you can eat a lobster tail, and you can eat. Well, I don't know what
Lobster claws.
Lobster claws and.
Lobster
But
milk.
fish, we don't
We
even
already said
try.
that.
Sometimes fish, like you could literally put it on a plate and it's fine. Like the whole fish. I don't. That happened. Do you remember that happened in Japan? You ordered something and it was like the fish with its fins, and like I hated it. I couldn't take it. You gave it a shot. I was.
It wasn't
proud
bad.
of you.
You've had like fried catfish and stuff before, right?
Fish on the bone. You know me. I'm a lazy food consumer. I want my chicken filleted. I want everything boneless, and so. I will eat wings, but that's part of my thing, is that like I don't like eating on the bone stuff. Whether it's just reminding me if I'm literally eating this leg or something, but like seeing the fish with its like mouth open and its fins where I remember it like stood. You could stand it up, or I don't know if that's not the right way to.
It had its fins sticking out to the side.
So it was it was not laying flat on the plate where it's like its eyes were. I mean, its head was as if it was swimming or something, and it was it was too much for me, man.
The funny thing about that story is that like we were in this was like an authentic sushi place, and so there wasn't any English in there.
Right.
Their menus didn't have any English on them or anything, and they had we were trying to order and pointing at pictures and all of this stuff, but we were trying to ask for their recommendation.
Yeah, like what's good.
I was trying to ask for their recommendation for what's good, and there was a miscommunication there, and the sushi chef held up this fish by the tail and was trying to. I interpreted his motioning as, "Do you like fish?" As he held up the fish, and I was like, "Yes." And I assumed that he was going to cut up that fish and make some sushi out of it, and so I was like, "Yes, give me that." And then the next thing I knew, he had like dunked it in a fryer and put it on my plate, the whole fish.
The whole fish.
Yeah. It did, but I mean, to his credit, it tasted good. I mean, it tasted like fried catfish, so it wasn't bad. I don't mind fried catfish. So
that was one of our surprises too about Japan, is that I thought we were going to get into crazy sushi I'd never heard of, or it'd be more. I guess it's almost Americanized that we do strange things with our sushi, because most of the places there, that was just pretty normal stuff or typical stuff. I'd say they didn't get fancy with it.
It was nigiri sushi everywhere we went in Japan, and we had to search pretty hard to find a place that had sushi rolls like we normally have in America.
Right.
In Tokyo, we had to search for a place that even served that. It was nigiri everywhere.
Which makes me think we just have a misconceptualized idea of what sushi is to Japanese people. Because I was thinking it was just going to be everywhere and we're going to get crazy rolls. So.
They've got it wrong, apparently. I didn't realize that Japan had sushi wrong.
They have it all wrong.
But I don't know. That lends weight to my case that America has the best version of everyone's food. I make the whole world mad.
There you go. Ostracize everyone.
But like Mexican food, like have you ever tried authentic Mexican food?
It's just not as cheesy.
Yeah, it's not as cheesy, and it's just not as good. I like cheap American-style Mexican food. That stuff is good. Same thing, like Italian food, like better, like just cheesy.
Yeah, Domino's pan pizza is the best.
Domino's pizza is good. Like people laugh at that, but Domino's pizza is like that stuff is tasty. It's good.
Well, I had this debate with Adam recently about take something that's just everywhere, like Subway or McDonald's, and it's easy.
Who's Adam?
Adam is a friend of mine, and you know Adam, and so
I know Adam.
Yeah. So Adam, I don't even care to explain he doesn't matter in this discussion really, other than he took the position that, and it's a fairly common one, that places like Subway and McDonald's are crappy. Like they're gross. But to say no one likes them, well, that's just wrong because they're everywhere. But he would say it's not that people like them, it's just that because they're everywhere, people go to them, and it's affordable and it's approachable, and it's it's high calorie content at a very affordable price, and it's
cheap. It's cheap, and at least for Subway, like they have a variety of stuff, sandwiches. I mean, I've eaten a good number of Subway sandwiches in my life. I guess I haven't eaten at Subway in probably 3 years or so, but still, like I've eaten there a number of times. McDonald's, there's so many alternatives to McDonald's that are just as cheap and just as burgery, so I avoid McDonald's. I haven't eaten at McDonald's in close to 10 years, I'm sure.
Well, this argument actually stems. We were in Miami and we went to this late night sandwich shop, and I did not want to go to the sandwich shop. We went, instead of pizza, we went to the sandwich shop, and I was kind of frustrated. And he's going, "Isn't this such a great sandwich?" And for me, sub sandwiches have a cap. Their ceiling of enjoyment is like, I guess, a 5. Like I'll taste it and go, that is a fine sandwich, I suppose. I don't get that excited.
You mean at Subway, or like even if you go to like a really nice hipster submarine? They call them submarines on their menu. Their menu is like recycled cardboard, and they have a nice font, rustic font.
Might as well have been this place.
They have like pictures of submarines on their walls or something. And it's like super hipster, low lighting. Even then, you wouldn't rate it more than a 5.
Right. From if it's deli meats, I'm saying. Now, if we're talking about sandwiches,
but
they
not
get into,
just deli meats.
Oh yeah,
we're talking about aged, local, grass-fed,
free range, whatever,
roast cow.
No, you're describing the place we went to essentially.
Acknowledge my joke.
Cow. Sorry, I was on to the next thought. Fair, though. That was good. So. But I was a little frustrated with him, and he was saying, "Isn't this delicious?" And I'll be honest, I mean, it was a toasted sub, man. Like that's what it was, and the range for me from crappy sub to delicious sub is almost like there's no discernment for me. And admittedly, like I don't care about it. And so I said, "Yeah, it's it's about like Subway," and I said that to frustrate him, and then he launched into like quality and how. He said they're horrible quality, and then my counter was I was just pushing his buttons and saying, if it's so bad, how is it everywhere? And then his justification was, the value and like people aren't that discerning and stuff. But I would still maintain if it's absolutely gross, because that's his position, sort of that it's gross. Then it just wouldn't go anywhere. It would never have gotten to the point that you could open everywhere. And Subway's particularly interesting because they actually had a healthy image and their quality used to be better apparently, but now they're everywhere and they've just screwed their name essentially by opening in gas stations and going, and they're not, there's no standardization really. It's pretty just terrible. It's a bad brand. It's kind of laughed at even in the fast food world as being like, look how bad or how far you've fallen kind of thing.
I wonder if we sent Subway sandwiches back in time 100 years. If we had little time machine boxes like in Looper, and we instead of sending convicted convicted murderers or whatever back in time to be killed, instead we sent Subway sandwiches back 100 years. Like, would the people open them reverently and like just would they choose to eat a Subway sandwich over the feeling of going to sleep or peeing? Like, would it be that delicious to them, the Subway sandwiches from the future? Or like, is the food of 1920, would it outclass Subway sandwiches in every way?
That's a good question. Like, I wonder if they taste it and think, oh, these meats are flavorless, and what they're basically articulating is how processed it is, even though they might not even understand what processed means, but they know something is compromised. Or is it uniquely like the fact that it has all these condiments and different toppings, is that a little more difficult to obtain? I mean, by 1920, I feel like you could go into a sandwich shop, right? Like they had that, like a 1920s.
Did they invent shops then?
Yeah,
when were shops invented?
Shops were invented in the 1920s, I think.
1920s.
And the first one was a deli, a Subway sandwich shop. So
okay.
No, I don't know. But 100 years ago, that's weird to think that. Yeah, there was definitely like sandwich shops, right? Like, I'm not just being silly. Of course they did. Like, I'm sounding dumb here, but they did.
Yeah, surely they did.
So, but if it was 300 years ago or something, like when they're like, what is this papery thing it's wrapped in? I'm talking about like it's almost mythical looking to them. I think it would be unbelievable to have all these different flavors, because they were just literally killing a chicken or whatever and eating it. They didn't put salt on anything. Like, they were just cooking it and plucking it and all of that. So it would be crazy to see this sliced meat, and I think it would be like the best thing they've ever had. I really do. Even just smelling a Subway, I think it's a really pleasant smell. That's their signature smell almost. So
yeah, I don't have that big of an issue with Subway. Like when I think about Subway, I don't go there that often because I have better alternatives. But I don't think of them as gross. McDonald's I do think of kind of gross.
Well, it's the low hanging fruit of like
that's right.
criticism of all fast food is bad. Look at McDonald's, or bad for you. There's a whole lot of connotations that we have culturally that. I don't know how true. There's a Penn and Teller episode about fast food and how it gets a bad rap, culturally speaking. It's really not as bad as we say. You'd probably enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well.
Did you hear Kobe Bryant died today?
Yes, I did hear that. And then immediately people were talking about how he, like, rapes and stuff, too.
Oh, yeah. that I saw a little bit. I only just read that like right before we started this podcast, and was like, oh yeah, that's a basketball player. And
I mean, for you to know him, it means he's like one of the
he's one of
elite
my
athletes
like
of all
he's
time.
one of like the 10 basketball players I could name, and he's one of them, along with like Michael Jordan.
You don't have to do this. Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah, I obviously could do it. So you're right. Silly task for me to put myself to. I don't need to do that.
Of course. No, but it that hit me because, I mean, he was one of the last. I think he was drafted as an 18-year-old into the NBA. This is before you said you had to go spend a year at college, and he was on the Lakers for forever, and he was. I mean, when I was huge into watching the NBA when I was younger, and David, we would watch these games, and just Kobe was one of my heroes. I have his rookie card. Like I have his rookie card that's like, do you know, like, did you ever collect baseball or basketball or any cards, football cards, and they would grade them? They'd put them in the case,
Mm-hmm,
and,
yeah.
and so I have like at the time it was valued at like $100.
Wow.
Yeah. The stupid thought that came in my head, but like, does his death impact that, the value of that card? That's just a stupid question though. Like, it's really,
It probably does.
yeah, but I'm more frustrated by the fact that, like, well, I honestly just don't know about all the allegations. I know, like, he cheated on his wife and bought her a big ring. This is like all stuff I don't really know. I just kind of absorbed from. There were some accusations about basketball players, including Kobe Bryant, who generally like take advantage of women, something along
Sure.
those lines. And so that's what I think people are like. He died, and so everyone they're pushing that narrative. It's like,
That's kind of disappointing. Wasn't one of his kids in the helicopter with him? Like, wasn't it 5 people who died in the crash?
Yes, 5.
No, I mean, obviously it wasn't just him out piloting his helicopter. So, I mean, for people to be talking more about his, shady past, alleged or whatever, it kind of sucks. Like,
It's a weird
when other
time.
people
when a
die too.
Cultural icon. It makes me wonder, like, what is that? Just kind of what's. I mean, look, I don't know if he just like did all these things, then either he should have been maybe in jail. I don't know, but like, it's strange to me that this cultural icon dies, and we just kind of want to jump to like, like blaming or just saying how gross and bad things are. I don't know. I just get really, really tired. That's all. I get tired.
Yeah, I get tired of that too. Is it just? I mean, Twitter is kind of a special little crazy world, right? Like, it's almost not reality. It's almost like it's super reality. Everything is just amplified there. Like, I don't know. Whenever it just seems like Twitter is a.
Don't they say Twitterverse? I mean, you and I don't know.
Yeah, they
We're
do
not on
say
it.
that. I don't participate on Twitter at all. So, but everything you hear from there. Again, I think it's a consequence of the shortened communication restrictions and stuff. Like, and that it's a popularity contest. It just encourages you to make short, punchy, provocative statements that are get people to react emotionally. So,
Well, and I guess my thing is, I want to be clear that I don't like if he did some terrible things. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't critique the man. I guess I'm just saying, is there nothing holy anymore? Like, someone dies, and we're just the first.
Why critique him on the day that he dies? I mean, instead of like, why weren't we critiquing? If you care so much about this, why weren't you critiquing it yesterday
Right.
or whenever, or when the allegations came out?
That's a valid question, and I mean, it's just because people are going to say good things about him, and that's what bothers me. I guess is the second, like, there's someone saying, "Oh, what a guy who contributed to NBA and he's whatever." I don't know, just eulogizing him essentially, and the immediate pushback of no, he's a rapist or whatever. Like, that's, I mean, I don't know. If a terrible rapist dies, then okay.
Well, if he was a terrible rapist, then surely he would be in jail, right?
That's what I think, right? If it was some really clear, obvious. I mean, but there are also power dynamics with celebrities, and so I just don't know. I haven't gone to study. I guess what just weighs on me is that when someone dies, and this is what I'm feeling when someone dies, is like sadness, and then to hear someone kind of go, no, you can't be sad. In fact, he was disgusting. And like, wow, he just died, and we're talking. It does something. I don't like. it's really sad that someone died, and it's really sad to me that then we also go into an even darker place, and it's all dark and negative and terrible to me. It's like, ugh, why?
Well, I think there's an additional thing to it too, is that his death was in a kind of a tragic fashion.
Yes,
you
by
know,
definition,
like a lot of times
almost.
when there are celebrity deaths, it's they die because they're old, and you kind of knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Or they die because they were overdosing or partying or whatever. And these are just kind of things that we can kind of write them off, and next week we will have mostly forgotten that this old celebrity died or this partying celebrity died.
Because if they're party, you can say they kind of deserved it. Not to be cold, but at least the universe seems fair. You do a lot of drugs, you might die.
But when Kobe Bryant dies in a helicopter crash, or Stevie Ray Vaughan dies in a helicopter crash, or there have been a handful of celebrity helicopter crashes, like then it's just kind of like, man, this wasn't because of him that he died.
Right.
It wasn't because he was old. It wasn't because he was irresponsibly doing drugs or whatever. It was because of a freak accident. And that's different. It seems like something that will stick in the collective memory a little bit longer.
I agree with you, because it's shocking and out of nowhere. There's no build toward it. There was no mental preparation. If someone's a partier, we can kind of go, they might face something difficult. Or if they're old, they can't live forever. I also think that there's, back to my point about feeling frustrated about the impulse to sort of critique right after death, is that every culture deals with death differently, right? But we do some strange things. We put them in a box and put them underground. I mean, of course we cremate and there are other options, but we have a funeral, but the whole point is, no matter what the culture is, we deal with death, and one of the ways we deal with it is doing a eulogy or remembering the fond things, or trying to focus on some positive memories, that sort of thing. And so
being twisted.
I react strongly to that sort of. I think that's an important cultural notion.
Is it a counter-traditional sort of outcry? You all want to, our traditional culture eulogizes and remembers fondly the people who die. Well, not me.
Yes.
I'm going to buck tradition and criticize.
I think it's truly coming from that place. Well, and it's provocative when someone dies to say something mean. So, but I almost feel like that's, I don't know. It doesn't shock me anymore. It just makes me sad. But you're right. I think there's a thing that's like, we do put people on a pedestal. And I think there are some problems with that, but I honestly think it's okay when someone dies to go, all right, well, what did they... It makes sense to say, let's remember some of the good times. Now, if they're complete and utter monsters, but I just have a hard time believing he is some complete and utter monster, that they weren't... If that's the case, I just feel like it would be more clear.
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
Speaking of sports, I'm really surprised you decided to do this podcast instead of watch the Super Bowl. Or is that tomorrow?
I think it might be
Super Bowl
next
Monday
weekend. And I think it might be next Monday.
Is it on Monday? Super Bowl Monday?
I'm going to ask Siri here, or I'm going to ask Google, and I also want to hear how it sounds on the microphone. Hey, Google, when is the Super Bowl?
The 49ers will be playing the Chiefs on February 2nd at 6:30 p.m.
February 2nd at 6:30 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Did you hear that at all?
Yeah, I could hear that fine. I knew that the Super Bowl were nearing that time because when I was having my pleasurable shopping experience at Publix, I saw a stand that talked about the Super Bowl, so I knew, here it comes.
So that was just you saying, hey, look, I know things about culture and football.
Yeah.
Could you have told me who was in it?
No, absolutely not. I couldn't even now. I'd forgotten what your Google Spy said to you.
If it had... I caught that, by the way. If I had realized the Super Bowl were happening right now, I would be a little sad because, I want to watch it. It's like one of the things we all collectively kind of do. Not everyone, obviously, but there's not that many things that everyone just kind of does. Everyone watches the Super Bowl.
Do they?
A
lot of people do.
They even talk about
Super Bowl
things
ratings
like,
up.
Yes, and the toilet flushing at halftime is even like a thing that you can see. Somehow that's like measurable, and you can see all these flushes, and it's tough on the city.
What? I don't even know what you're talking about.
I don't know, something about this is all. It sounds kind of made up, but I've heard that like the it's tough on the pipes and it's tough on the whole like city, like in New York and major cities.
Everyone goes to the bathroom during halftime.
Yeah, because that's a general thing. People go pee during halftime or use the
halftime
restroom.
Is long in the Super Bowl.
Well,
though,
right, but you can see in this like sort of window, like wow, look at the number of I don't know. They're not counting flushes, I guess, but like the water consumed is
level.
like wild in this very like 45-minute span. It's like this incredible thing to see, and that's a neat idea. It's because of the Super Bowl that this is happening.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. It's kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'd need to go look into that, but that's just what I remember hearing and going, huh, like the ultimate like flush. Everyone. I like this idea of everyone in America
ultimate
flushing.
The Super Bowl, ultimate flush.
Yeah, I wasn't even trying to build toward that, but I like it.
Welp. That's a good way to wrap it up.
I think it is.
See you next
time.
time.
Whoop.